Good evening, Chicago. Welcome back in for another episode of Chi-Town Weekly here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. They may have done it. You certainly cannot say that Ryan Poles hasn't tried any longer. The Bears have addressed their biggest concern left on the roster. They have a pass rusher. We will talk about that, what implications that has for the rest of the team, the rest of the offseason, plus just how training camp has been looking for the boys as well, as they have an off day tonight, but Family Fest was last night. How are things looking? Then we'll head over again to baseball. The Cubs just keep raking. Another fantastic week, winning series against both the Reds, who came into town as the best team in the National League Central, and then the Atlanta Braves, who came in as the best team in the National League. What's up next this week for the North Siders? And then over on the South Side, well, there's news being made, but it's definitely not stuff that manager Pedro Grifol or general manager Rick Hahn would really like everybody to be talking about. More conflict and dirty laundry getting aired in public for all of us. We'll react to the weekend that was for the White Sox. All that and more coming up here on Chi-Town Weekly. Buckle it on up. Let's have fun. And once again, hello and good evening, everyone. I am your host, Adam Karnick. Glad to be with you here tonight on this first Monday in August. First Monday post MLB trade deadline. All the big moves had already happened by the time that we went on the air last week, but still we can react to some of that a little bit, as the Cubs moves in particular have been paying off already for them. And the White Sox, so some of the people they've traded away, have had some less than flattering things to say about the organization since leaving. But we will start off with the Bears and training camp and everything going on up at Hallis Hall. No practice today, but there's been lots going on with the team. The offenses look good at times. The defense won a couple of days, but then a huge signing over the weekend that is going to be huge for the Bears this season in helping out one side of the ball and probably realistically the team as a whole. But before we get too far into it, of course, we do want to get our homework done here on the show and acknowledge our sponsor, Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, the single-A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all-brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. This is some of the best jerky you can get your hands on. All you have to do is visit planetjerky.net, place your order there, and they ship nationwide. Shout out to our sponsor, Planet Jerky, Premium Brisket Beef Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet. For the last 9 years now, IE Sports Radio has brought you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Make sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok to keep up with the latest in sports and with our shows. Also, check out our daily updated website, iesportsradio.com, for sports news, the IE Sports Radio the IE Sports Radio blog, our Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month, pages dedicated to each of our podcasts, our IE Sports Radio community forum, and stop by the shop and check out all the merchandise. Thank you for continuing to make IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports. And ways that you can interact with this show as well. This show is still on Twitter or X, whatever it's being called now. You can find the show at IESRC on Twitter, or you can follow along with me personally. I am at Adam_Karnick. And if you are listening live here on Spreaker.com on this Monday night, hop on into the chat. Good evening, Steven. He is in the chat already saying, hey, good evening to you, sir. Hop on in. We can interact, have some fun back and forth that way, have a little fun that way as well. Or if you're listening later on in the week via a podcast on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, however you get our content, thank you for making us part of your sports week. We really do appreciate it. So wanted to start the show off tonight with the Bears. If you were listening the last couple of weeks here on IE Sports Radio, 3 and Out, Larry B was doing the annual 8 divisions in 8 days. 2 weeks ago began AFC week, and then last week was NFC week. And the NFC North actually was the last division to get featured across the entire league. Myself, Bernie Bango, one of the co-hosts of our Big Cheese Sports Radio, talking all things Wisconsin sports. Steven in the chat room is the other co-host there. Bernie was talking all things Packers. My co-host on the Neutral Zone, Zach Puplis, was on talking all things Lions. I, of course, talked Bears. And if you listen in with the segment I did, I pointed out how, in my eyes, the biggest hole still on the roster, and it's not like this is any shocking news to Bears fans, the pass rush. That was the concern still, that the Bears came in with the most room under the salary cap. They had the number 1 overall pick, plus some other selections, and the Bears came away with 0 legitimate new pass rushers at the end of free agency, at the end of the draft. And for a team that only got 20 sacks as a team a season ago, it was awfully hard to defend that. Yes, Poles had talked about how this was going to be a multi-year rebuilding project. This wasn't simply going to be 1 year and then everything's fixed. But still, rushing the passer is one of the most important things that you need to do as a football team. You've got to have a quarterback, and you've got to be able to you've got to protect your quarterback, and you've got to get to the other guy's quarterback. The Bears have taken care of 2 of those things, but the third was still out there. Now that is taken care of. Now that has been resolved. The Bears brought in Yannick Ngakoue, one of the premier pass rushers in the NFL a season ago, has signed with the Bears. And my first reaction, besides just cheering and being excited, was finally, what took so long to get this done? He just turned 28 years old. He's coming off of a season where he had 9.5 sacks, and I'm pulling up his stats from last year. Played in 15 games and had 9.5 sacks. He very near. I mean, that's nearly half as many as the Bears had as a team a year ago. He's been now. This is now the Bears will be his fifth NFL team, fifth since 2019. He was originally drafted by the Jaguars, spent his first 4 years there, has then had 1 year each with Minnesota in 2020, Vegas 2 years ago, and then Indianapolis a year ago. Hello, Davidson. What's good? Good evening, sir. And it's, why was this guy available? Why didn't the Bears snatch him up earlier? It's a 1 year deal, $10.5 million. $10 million of it is guaranteed. So there's a $500,000 carrot just kind of dangling there in front of him a little bit. But it's really what took so long, and it's reportedly Ngakoue wanted a multi-year deal, and Poles didn't want to commit to multiple years to a guy that, outside of rushing the passer, he has 65 sacks already in his NFL career. In his 7-year career, he's the only year he's had less than 8 was the pandemic year, when he only participated in 6 games. Otherwise, he's participated in at least 15 games every year, and he's managed at least 8 sacks every year. The reason that he was still out there, though, he is exclusively a pass rusher. He doesn't really give you much of anything in the way of defending the rush. He's only got he's got a grand total of 201 tackles total in his 7 years. 162 of them have been solo, and he's had less than 20 each of the last 3 years. He has been exclusively a pass rusher. He's just somebody that's going to get after the quarterback. But you know what? That's fine. If all he does is go out there on third down and second and long pass it, you just bring him out there in sub packages where you're just worried about trying to get after their quarter. That's fine. That's what the Bears need. They don't have anybody else on the roster that is proven to do this. So it makes all the sense in the world for me. I am very glad that Poles did this. Can kind of exhale a little bit. As we're getting ready for the first preseason game now this Saturday, taking on Davidson's Tennessee Titans for whatever that's worth, we now should see something that will resemble a little bit closer to an actual NFL defense up front. Ngakoue still hasn't practiced with the Bears. He signed his contract, and then they immediately let him go home so that he could work out family arrangements for where they're going to live this season, where they're going to stay, all those kinds of things. So he actually hasn't practiced with the team yet. The Bears had a couple of practices over the weekend, then they have today off. But how have things looked while they're at practice? The offense had a terrific day yesterday at Soldier Field for the Family Fest practice. The Bears' offense yesterday looked excellent. Justin Fields engineered a 74-yard touchdown drive. They had multiple scores with the offense yesterday, getting the better of the defense overall yesterday. Things are starting to click. And with Justin in particular, things are seemingly slowing down for him. That he's making the appropriate reads both at the line before the snap and then after the ball is snapped, of understanding where to go with the ball. He's using his legs not just to run, but to also evade pressure in the backfield and throw, and keeping his eyes up to throw the ball. he's connecting with a lot of receivers. Obviously, DJ Moore being the biggest one, but Chase Claypool is fitting in nicely now that he's had an offseason to kind of digest and learn the playbook a little bit better. Cole Kmet, his name has come up a lot reading the post-practice reports from those that are there covering everything. It's not been perfect. He's had some bad interceptions, but it's everything's trending in the right direction. It'll be interesting to see how things look on Saturday. Personally, I'll be surprised if we see much of the start. We'll find out more. Coach Eberflus is next scheduled to speak on Wednesday to the media, and I'm sure he will be asked what the plan is for the starters on Saturday. Honestly, I'd be good with giving the ones a drive, get your feet wet, get that rush of, hey, we're back out on a football field hitting somebody other than our teammates, but get them out there after that. Don't rush them into this. I don't want to see anybody get hurt. It's the worst thing to have happen is for somebody seriously to get hurt in a preseason game. And there have been enough guys on this team that haven't been practicing that have missed consecutive practices, including Nate Davis and Tevin Jenkins on the offensive line. We don't need people getting hurt. So get the guys out there for one drive. If it's a quick drive, maybe a second drive, but then get them out. Get them out. Let the backups play. Let the backups get their exposure. That's how I'd like to see things go on Saturday. But it'll be fun to watch Yannick. It'll be fun to watch Ngakoue, see if he's able to disrupt anything, and just hopefully to have a legitimate pass rush now with the Bears. Their biggest hole, hopefully now, has been filled. And going to make a little plug real quick. Starting next week, I am going to be going through a new segment to get ready for the football season. Of course, Larry B has 3 and Out and the 8 divisions in 8 days, and he did an excellent job. All the hosts, all the guests that contributed to that did a phenomenal job. I highly encourage you, if there's a team in particular that you want to learn some more about, go ahead, go back through the archives of Spreaker and find that division that you're interested in and go back and listen to them. But here on this show, I want to do a little bit more of a dive into each of the Bears' divisional opponents. So starting next week, we're going to be starting a mini segment on the show called Know Your Enemy. We are going to be we're going to start things off with the Green Bay Packers. Bernie Bango, I previously mentioned him. He's one of our co-hosts, one of our friends here at IE Sports Radio, co-host of Big Cheese Sports on Sunday afternoons, 1:00 Central Time. He and I are going to be on, and we're going to be taking a little bit deeper of a dive into the Green Bay Packers, getting to know them a little bit better as they get ready to begin the Jordan Love era and whatever that will entail. And we'll get ready for week 1 on the lakefront. I am so excited for that game. But we're gonna sit down a little bit and have some fun chopping it up a little bit. So starting next week, we're going to be getting to learn a little bit more about the other 3 teams in the NFC North. And we'll start that next week with the dreaded Green Bay Packers. Coming up next, though, on the show here tonight, we're going to talk some baseball. We've got to talk both sides of town a little bit. The Cubs are playing right now. Both teams are underway. The Cubs have been playing for a little bit now. It is the top of the 5th out in Queens Let's check in on the Cubs and celebrate the week they had last week a little bit. This is Chi-Town Weekly on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. We'll be right back after this.
Ladies and gentlemen, hear me and hear me good. If you like sports, then you like the Wait a Minute Show. If you like comedy, then you like the Wait a Minute Show. If you like a different opinion coming from a different angle, then you like the Wait a Minute Show. So join me Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with your host, Jelani J.B. Bodie. And of course, my man Lopan on the WaitAMinuteShow.com. Ain't that right, Lopan?
It's IE Sports Radio. It is your direct feed for all that is sports. It is Philly Sports Talk with Cash and Chris every Tuesday night right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Philly Sports Talk with Cash and Chris is the most comprehensive view on Philadelphia sports exclusively right here on IE Sports Radio. You know what it is, your direct feed for all that is sports. Tuesday night, IE Sports Radio, Philly Sports Talk with Cash and Chris.
Hey sports fans, are you in the market for Florida sports or just keeping up with the latest in the Panhandle? Palm Tree Sports is a dedicated audio hub to all things sports in the Sunshine State. We cover current events, big news, heavily favored opinions all across the NFL, NBA, MLB, and so much more. So come check us out every Saturday evening at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. For a down south education on Florida sports and athletics, it's hosted by yours truly, Corey Pujols, and is powered by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's good, fight fans? It's your boy, Marcus Los Great, here to give you what you want, here to give you what you need. Yeah, man. Yeah. I'm coming to you live, straight from your mama's basement with a crispy white tea. We're coming to you live every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Powered by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's happening, sports fans? Are you a fan of Southern California sports? Are you looking for a show hotter than a hot summer day in California? Then look no further than the SoCal Supreme Sports Show, where I talk about all things Southern California sports. That's right, all sports teams from Southern California. From the hard-hitting tackles of the NFL, to the killer crossovers and big three-pointers of the NBA and WNBA, to the grand slams of the MLB, to the bone-chilling goals of the NHL, and to the booming kicks of the MLS. the SoCal Supreme Sports Show has it all for you. Oh, and let us not forget about the college sports as well. So join me, Taryn Rodriguez, every week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And welcome back into Chi-Town Weekly, everybody, here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. A little bit wrapping up from the football from the first segment. Davidson, who's a resident Titans fan, as well as one of the co-hosts of Fast Break on Sunday evenings here on IE Sports Radio, saying that the Titans' offensive line needs some work. Well, good. That'll be good practice then for the Bears' defensive line because it needs some work too. Even with the addition of Ngakoue, the Bears' D-line is still very much a work in progress. The line as a whole is still probably my biggest question area, certainly of the defense and probably of the team as a whole, as just a position group goes. On the offense, the offensive line, I have a little bit more confidence than the defensive line, though some questions abound in other places, specifically like at left tackle. We'll see what happens there. But glad to see that the Titans' offensive line needs some work. It'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. That for as little as you can get out of preseason games, the nice thing is you can evaluate the line plays a little bit because they're able to actually do their jobs. In practice, you can only get so much understanding of what the offensive and defensive lines are trying to do watching practice, because obviously they don't want to hurt each other and they have limited contact that they're allowed to do so much in practice. So the line plays can be really difficult to get a feel for in practice. So that's the one nice thing about the preseason games. You can get a little bit feel for the lines. And Mike Pat, yes, you made it, sir. You made it. We had a little bit of a late start, having some technology issues, but you made it. Glad that you are here. And yes, a lot of former edge rushers getting signed this week from off of Baltimore to going other places. Justin Houston making his way to Carolina. That was somebody else that was getting thrown around for the Bears. I mean, for the Bears, any pass rusher that's been even vaguely, remotely hinted at possibly thinking about conceptually playing for a team different from the one they did last season has been linked to the Bears at some point in the last 6 months. So, but good for Justin Houston that he's now out at Carolina. Hopefully he's able to have some success, not when they play against the Bears, of course, but against some of the other teams. Excuse me. But then I do want to get over to baseball. Now, tonight is not going so well for the Cubs because it's a Drew Smyly start. And once again, Drew Smyly could not get out of the first inning unscathed. That's been kind of a problem for him, especially as of late. He wound up... Pete Alonso's been his biggest problem tonight. He's given up 2 home runs to the New York Mets first baseman, Pete Alonso, 2 for 2 with 2 home runs and 5 RBIs. Cody Bellinger has been the offense so far for the Cubs. Meanwhile, he's also 2 for 2 with a pair of RBI 3 for 3 with a couple of RBI hits. He is accounted for both of the Cubs' runs tonight as the Cubs are out in Queens to start this week for a 3-game set with the Mets. Currently down 5-2 in the bottom of the 5th, but the Cubs offense has shown lately that it's very good at scoring runs late in the game. So it's still, there's plenty of baseball left to be played in this one. But my goodness, a couple weeks ago, I brought up that it was now or never for the Cubs, and they have not stopped. They are, since the All-Star break, So we can blame Mike Pat for Pete Alonso's success tonight. The Baltimore Orioles held Alonso hitless over the weekend, so Alonso's taking his frustration out on the Cubs. We'll tell him to stop it, will you? He can go take that out on whatever team the Mets have next. For right now, even though Drew Smyly's easily it's amazing. The Cubs they've gotten to a point now. We'll come back to the thought I was about to make. Since the All-Star break, the Cubs are 16-7, the best team in the National League. They have won their last 6 series. They are 13-3 in their last 6 games. What a week it was for the Cubs. First, they welcomed in at the time, division-leading Cincinnati Reds and absolutely took it to them, taking 3 out of 4 in that series, and had some huge wins. Yeah, they lost by 10 in the first one, but then turned that around and They lost by a bit. They lost by a bit in the first one, 6-5 in the first one, but then turned that around and 20-9, 16-6, and 5-3. And Candelario, the newest acquisition for the Cubs, just absolutely was raking. You couldn't get him out. Didn't matter if he was playing first base or third base. He was raking at the plate. He was a menace at the plate. I think he had 3 doubles. He wound up with his first Cubs home run during that series. Knocked the Reds out of first place, and now coming into play tonight, the Cubs and Reds are technically tied for second, though the Cubs have the slight edge because they have 1 fewer loss than the Reds do. The Reds have 1 more win, but the Cubs have 1 less loss than the Reds, so they give the Cubs the little bit of an edge there. Then they welcome in the National League leading Atlanta Braves and took 2 out of 3. Yeah, the first game didn't go so well, lost 8-0 in that one, but turned around and won 8-6 on Saturday in a crazy, wet, rainy, weird kind of game where Javier Assad had to make, it wasn't necessarily an emergency start because the Cubs knew they were going to have to do something coming into that game with Marcus Stroman being placed on the injured list a few days earlier, but you didn't know who exactly was going to fill in the spot. Assad only went 3 2/3, but he pitched his butt off in that game. He did tremendously well for somebody that's, still only has been up in the show for about 6 weeks now, came up over 4th of July weekend, and has been working pretty much out of the bullpen to this point. Did very, very well in that game Saturday. It helped that the Cubs spotted him such a nice lead to get started, and then the bullpen held on from there. And then a 6-4 victory yesterday. Dansby Swanson, playing against his former team, had a terrific series. He went hitless in the first game, but then had a home run against the Braves in the second one. He had a couple of hits in the game yesterday, several RBIs. He had himself a very, very, very nice series against his former mates. And suddenly the Cubs find themselves just a game and a half out of first place in the National League Central, only 1 game behind the only 1 loss behind the Milwaukee Brewers. And the Cubs, amazingly enough, are still the only team in the division with a positive run differential. It's blossomed itself all the way up down to plus 75. Scoring 36 runs in 2 games will help do that for sure. But they're right there with it. They have played themselves back into the playoffs, and now if this were over right now, the Cubs would be the final wild card. They would be in the playoffs as it sits right now. They'd be taking on the Milwaukee Brewers in the first series. They'd have a best of 3 in Milwaukee, and boy, you want to talk about taking away a home field advantage. Have it be a playoff series in Milwaukee against the Cubs and the Brewers. Hey, you're home for 3 straight playoffs games. Great. Who's our opponent? The Cubs. Oh, shoot. Never mind. We don't have home field advantage. We have it in the technical sense that we're batting last, but no more than that. And we're able to actually look at it right now from a Cubs perspective, and we could have the conversation and say that, hey, if you were lining up the Cubs rotation right now, who would be in it? And for me, the guy that wouldn't be in it would be the guy that's starting tonight, Drew Smyly. He would be the guy that I would take out of the rotation at this point. Maybe you throw him into the bullpen, but they've tried a couple of times throwing an opener for him and waiting to have Smyly come in the second inning. But the first inning for him has just been so rough this season, and you see it again tonight. He winds up giving up a 3-run homer in the first inning and just instantly putting the Cubs in a hole. And that's the difference in the game right now as we head into the 6th inning. It's 5-2. The Cubs are down 3. That 3-run homer is the difference right now. Now, still, there's still plenty of time left in it. The Cubs have got 9 more outs to play with here offensively, and they've shown a penchant for scoring late in the game lately. As you've got Swanson, who's going to be set to lead things off here in the 6th. It's going to be Swanson, Candelario, and Morel. So 3 guys that definitely, can do some damage with the bat in their hands. But yeah, it was not that long ago. The Cubs were 9 games out, and it was they want to buy, but should they? To now, they're one of the top teams in the National League, and now as we can afford to peek ahead a little bit here. Yes, they've got the Mets this week, and then they go to Toronto this weekend to play 3 against the Blue Jays. But then after that, they get to live in the American League Central for the next week and a half after that. 2 more against the White Sox, 3 against the Royals. Woof. 2 of the worst teams in baseball back-to-back that the Cubs catch at Wrigley before they go on the road and start with a road trip in Detroit. So, and then finish that up with the Pirates. So they've got a wonderful opportunity here later this month to keep pressure up on Milwaukee, continue to make headway, and possibly even as we look, the final series of the month is a 3-game set against the Brewers. When we get to that, maybe it'll be the Cubs in first place when we get to that. It's amazing what the Cubs have been doing, and it's the bats have come alive, but the pitching and the defense has continued to allow them to stay in games, and it's just now finally the offense is coming to life to help the team out, and it is great to see. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, we have a whole different kind of offense going on. The Sox managed to take 2 out of 3 while they were in Cleveland, but that was not the story of the weekend for the White Sox. We've got to talk about things that are going down on the South Side. This is Chi-Town Weekly, part of IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hey yo, what's up? It's your man Bishop, the voice of This Is KC Sports, the show where we go over the Chiefs, the Royals, KC Current, Sporting KC, MU, and oh yeah, if we got time, we'll even throw in some of that KU stuff from my people on the 913 South. Come and hang out with us every Sunday, 2 p.m. Central Standard Time on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What up, Boston sports fans? This is Mikey Two Guns here, your host of Our Bleepin' City, airing every Wednesday night from 7 to 8 p.m. right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Please join me. We'll talk everything Boston sports, all the local teams, college teams. I'm even down to talk MMA, boxing, whatever you guys want. So join me every Wednesday night, 7 to 8 p.m. Chime in with your questions on the chat, tweet the show. We'll even have call-ins. I can't wait to hear from you guys. This is going to be a lot of fun. So once again, it's Our Bleepin' City. I am your host, Mikey Two Guns, every Wednesday night from 7 to 8 p.m. right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. See you soon, people.
IE Sports Radio fans, it's your boy, the SoCal Saint, the host of the premier professional wrestling podcast online today, the IE Elite Wrestling Show. If you're a fan and have a passion for the world of professional wrestling, this is the show for you. I take you inside the ropes with all the athleticism, high-flying, and hard-hitting action, and then we take it backstage with all the backstage drama and backstabbing that goes on in the world of professional wrestling today. If something's going on in the world of professional wrestling, rest assured, the SoCal Saint knows what's going on, and he's going to let you know too. If you're a fan, check us out every Tuesday, 12 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, only on IE Sports Radio. The IE Elite Wrestling Show, your direct feed for all that is professional wrestling, on the only network that is your direct feed for all that is sports. Check us out.
What's up, sports fans? You're listening to IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. I'm your favorite West Coast Wisconsinite, Bernie Bango, and if you're a cheesehead, come listen to my show, Big Cheese Sports, where we road trip around America's Dairyland, previewing, reviewing, predicting, debating, and digging into all that is Wisconsin sports at the college and pro levels. Join me on IE Sports Radio, Sundays at 1 p.m. Central Standard. Bernie out.
Everybody, this is Darren Rodriguez. Are you a fan of volleyball? Are you a fan of Thunderous Spikes? Then I have the show for you, Set Point, where I cover NCAA men's and women's volleyball, high school boys and girls volleyball, beach volleyball, and even professional volleyball. Catch the action every week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And welcome back into Chi-Town Weekly here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Adam Karnick with you here for just about another 10 minutes or so before we turn things over to Taryn Rodriguez and Set Point, though he is going to be starting, he let me know this afternoon, he is going to be starting a little later than usual. He's probably going to be starting closer to about 8:30 Central Time with Set Point tonight, but bringing you everything to know there in the volleyball world. So the White Sox managed to take 2 out of 3 against the Guardians in Cleveland over the weekend. Don't ask me why they suddenly decided to, play baseball and start winning some games against a playoff contender now that they are most decidedly out of it and have sold off players. I don't get it. I don't understand why. It is what it is. But that was absolutely not the story. The story of the weekend was Saturday night, Tim Anderson and and Guardians third baseman Jose Ramirez got into it with a massive brawl at second base after the two of them exchanged words. Ramirez decided that he didn't like the way that Anderson was applying some tags. Anderson basically said, "You want to come at me, bro?" And Ramirez said, "Sure, I'm happy to do that." And the two of them threw down their gloves and put up their fists. And Anderson definitely got the worst of it. He took one right to the head and went down. The two sides, bullpens cleared, benches cleared. It was a full 15 minutes of brawling. And it became multiple brawls. It was wild. It was crazy. Suspensions came down this afternoon. I am shocked at how light the suspensions are. I mean, one of the first things I thought of when I saw it was I was remembering Rougned Odor and the fight that he got into a few years ago. I think it was 2019, right before the pandemic. He got into one where literally they were throwing sunglasses at each other. They were throwing punches and fists at each other, and it turned into a brawl. That was an 8-game suspension. So my buddy Matt, he's been on the show a couple of times. We were talking about it in our little group chat, and we both felt like 8 was going to be too light, that 8 games wasn't going to be enough. We were wondering whether it was going to be 9 or 10 games that they were going to hand down. Suspensions were announced today. Anderson got the most because he instigated the fight. He only got 6 games. Ramirez got 3. Cleveland closer Emmanuel Class, he got 1. Pedro Grifol and Terry Francona have also both been suspended a game. Anderson and Ramirez are both appealing their suspensions, so they're playing. Grifol is not managing tonight as the Sox are taking on the New York Yankees. Francona and Clace are serving their suspensions tonight. And then, also the third base coach for Cleveland, Mike Sarbaugh, was suspended for a game. He's going to serve his tomorrow. I get it that, okay, what does it cost you to appeal? There's no penalty for appealing. It doesn't hurt you at all to appeal. So sure, go ahead and appeal and see how long they'll push it out, and then maybe you'll miss having to go on a road trip instead of, being on a road trip when it happens. Maybe you're able to stay home for 6 days while everybody else is traveling. Maybe that's how it'll work for you. I am shocked that it's only 6 games for Anderson. I was thinking it was going to be 10 for sure. It's not what baseball wants being known for. And I saw Herb Lawrence of CHGO put it on Twitter that, this is probably what Tim Anderson is going to get remembered for. In the same way that Robin Ventura is remembered for charging Nolan Ryan on the mound and absolutely getting the worst of it. This might very well be what Tim Anderson is remembered for all his time in Chicago playing with the White Sox. It might all culminate in just this one moment in this one brawl. And it's very disappointing. It's very disappointing. And then, speaking of the Yankees, they come into town tonight, and ahead of that, now there's a report that one of the pitchers that the Sox traded last week, Kenyon Middleton, absolutely ripped a new one in the team, saying that they absolutely have no rules, they have no structure, they have no leadership in the locker room. Quote, we came in, and Middleton, mind you, came in on a minor league contract this year. He's been one of the great performers for the White Sox this year. But he's new to the team this year. Quote, we came in with no rules. I don't know how you police the culture if there are no rules or guidelines to follow because everyone is doing their own thing. Like, how do you say anything about it? Because there are no rules. He goes on to describe that rookies were falling asleep in the bullpen, that you had players skipping out on meetings and no punishment. You had guys not showing up for pitchers doing fielding practice during BP, and there was no accountability for it. Other sources on the team corroborated it. Lance Lynn, one of the other pitchers that got traded, he didn't directly confirm it, but he also said that he wasn't going to disagree with anything that Middleton said. And it's unfortunate. And you need to throw it on Pedro Grifol because he's manager of the team, but it's not all on Pedro's lap because Middleton talked to guys that were there last year and said, oh yeah, this is the same as it was last year. Nothing's changed here. This is a reason why I really feel like the White Sox really need to, this offseason, they need to tear it all down. They need to get rid of as many of these guys as they can. Tim Anderson, they've got a player option on him. I know you'd like to trade him to try to get something for him because he's meant so much to you. I don't think you can afford to pick up that option and risk playing him at this point. It's sad that it's gotten to this point. But I think Anderson needs a fresh start from the franchise, and I think the franchise needs a fresh start away from Tim Anderson. And I think that goes for a lot of the other guys on the roster at this point. You just need to do a very hard reset and restart for these guys. All right, that is going to do it for our show here tonight. Want to say thank you again to our sponsor, Planet Jerky Beef Jerky. Be sure to check them out, planetjerky.net. You can place your order. I've got some jerky headed this way that I am very anxious to try out and test. So we'll be able to let you know what we think of it. Thank you to Larry B. All the hard work that he does behind the scenes here at IE Sports Radio, getting new hosts. We've got a new host for Cleveland. We've got a new Cleveland show coming up. We've got a Houston show coming up along the lines as well. We've got a new Louisiana, New Orleans show coming up here in the next couple of weeks. So thank you to Larry B, all the hard work you've been doing as well. And thank you to everybody that was hanging out in the chat room tonight. Steven, Davidson, Mike, thank you guys for hanging out with us here in the chat room tonight. Finally, thank you for coming and listening. Again, whether this was live here Monday night or whether you catch the show later on as a podcast during the week, thank you for making this show part of your weekly sports routine. I really do appreciate that. Coming up next here on IE Sports Radio in about 30 minutes or so, it'll be Taryn Rodriguez with Set Point, breaking down everything happening in the world of professional volleyball, and probably going to be doing some NCAA previews here tonight as well. Coming up next week on the show, we will be starting Know Your Enemy. We'll be taking a closer look into that team up north, the Green Bay Packers, and hopefully having some fun along the way. We'll also check in on the Cubs and White Sox as well as the Sky and whatever else is going on during the week. Until then, I am Adam Karnick for IE Sports Radio. Have a good night, everybody.